Let's get right into it. You've been told your entire life that being an optimist is the key to success, health, and happiness. Look on the bright side. See the glass as half full. Turn that frown upside down. It's the mandatory advice slapped onto everything from coffee mugs to corporate wellness posters. But what if that's not just wrong, but dangerously wrong? What if the relentless pursuit of positivity is actually setting you up for failure, heartbreak, and in some truly bizarre cases, even an early grave? Science, it turns out, has a dark side to share about the sunny side of life. Today, we're counting down the terrifying downsides of being an optimist, according to actual, peer-reviewed, buzz-killing science. In 1965, a U.S. Navy pilot named James Stockdale was shot down over North Vietnam. He spent the next 7.5 years as a prisoner of war in the infamous Hanoi Hilton, where he was repeatedly and brutally tortured. He had no reason to believe he would survive, no release date to look forward to, and no contact with the outside world. Now, who do you think fared the worst in that hellscape? According to Stockdale himself, it wasn't the cynics or the realists, it was the optimists. This is the core of what's now known as the Stockdale paradox. When interviewed for the book, Good to Great, Stockdale explained that the guys who didn't make it were the ones who were always certain they'd be out by a specific date. They were the ones who'd say, "We're going to be out by Christmas." Christmas would come and go. Then they'd say, "We're going to be out by Easter." And Easter would come and go, and then Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again. They were living on a diet of pure, unadulterated hope, and it was killing them. They died, as Stockdale put it, of a broken heart. Their optimism was a fragile shield that shattered against the brutal, repetitive reality of their situation. When hope is your only strategy, every unmet expectation is a devastating blow to your will to live. Stockdale, on the other hand, survived by embracing a grim duality. He said, "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be." He accepted the sheer awfulness of his situation without sugarcoating it. He focused on day-to-day survival, not on a fantasy rescue date. This wasn't pessimism, it was a brutal, pragmatic realism. He had faith he'd get out eventually, but he didn't pretend to know when. The takeaway here is that blind optimism is a liability in a long-term crisis. It creates a boom and bust cycle of hope and despair. True resilience isn't about believing things will magically be okay. It's about having the fortitude to face the fact that they are absolutely not okay right now and still finding a reason to keep going. Have you ever heard someone say, "Oh, I'm a great driver. I don't need to worry," right after cutting across 3 lanes of traffic without a signal? Or the friend who invests their life savings in a cryptocurrency named after a dog because it's definitely going to the moon? That's not just confidence. That's a cognitive glitch hardwired into your brain called the optimism bias. It's the reason most of us think we're less likely than the average person to get divorced, get fired, or get cancer. We are, in short, statistically delusional. Neuroscientist Tali Sharot has done extensive research on this, showing that the human brain is fundamentally wired to anticipate positive outcomes. When we receive good news, the parts of our brain responsible for processing information and error tracking go into overdrive. But when we receive bad news, those same regions basically go on a coffee break. Your brain literally downplays negative information. For example, if you're told your personal risk of getting a certain disease is 30%, you might process it as, "Oh, neat, only 30%. But if you're told the risk is 10% lower than you thought, you lock that information in like a bank vault. This bias feels great. It reduces stress and anxiety, but it makes us terrible risk assessors. It's why people text while driving, thinking the accident will happen to someone else. It's why about 50% of marriages end in divorce, even though nearly 100% of couples walking down the aisle believe theirs will last forever. Your brain is essentially a hype man who tells you you're special. You're the exception to the rule. This is wonderful for your self-esteem, but catastrophic for your decision-making. It's a form of self-deception that encourages reckless behavior by whispering the 4 most dangerous words in the English language. It won't happen to me. A little bit of pessimism, or what some call defensive pessimism, is actually a survival mechanism. It's the voice in your head that says, hey, maybe don't try to pet that raccoon, even if it looks friendly. Picture this. You've had a truly awful day. Your car broke down, your boss yelled at you, and your pet hamster has started a tiny but surprisingly well-organized cult. You vent to a friend, hoping for a little empathy. Instead, you get a barrage of motivational nonsense. Everything happens for a reason, they chirp. Just choose happiness, they demand. Good vibes only, they command, as if they're an emotional bouncer kicking your sadness out of the club. This isn't helpfulness. This is toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is the relentless, suffocating belief that no matter how dire a situation is, people should maintain a positive mindset. It's not just optimism, it's optimism as a weapon, used to silence and invalidate any negative human emotion. The core story here isn't one single event, but millions of tiny, soul-crushing interactions that happen every day. It's the story of anyone who's been told to look on the bright side when they're grieving, or to stop being so negative when they're pointing out a genuine problem. The why behind its toxicity is simple. It's a form of gaslighting. When you tell someone, or yourself, that their sadness, anger, or fear is unacceptable, you're not getting rid of the emotion. You're just adding a layer of shame on top of it. Psychological studies have shown that emotional suppression, the act of bottling up your real feelings, is a terrible strategy. It's linked to higher levels of stress hormones like cortisol, a weaker immune response, and can actually worsen anxiety and depression. Your brain is a complex ecosystem, and sadness and anger are as much a part of it as joy. Trying to live a good vibes only life is like trying to run a forest with only sunshine and no rain. Nothing will grow. It will just become a desert. So the next time someone hits you with a dose of toxic positivity, remember what they're really saying. Your authentic human experience is making me uncomfortable. Please perform a more pleasant one for my convenience. Let's start with a scientific principle first identified by the godfathers of behavioral economics, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. It's called the planning fallacy, and it is the mother of all project failures, blown budgets, and missed deadlines. The fallacy describes our brain's deeply optimistic and frankly idiotic tendency to underestimate the time, cost, and risk of a future task, while simultaneously overestimating its benefits. It's the belief that, this time, things will go exactly as planned, despite all historical evidence to the contrary. You might think this is just a personal quirk, but it has brought empires and industries to their knees. For proof, look no further than the iconic Sydney Opera House. In 1957, the plan was simple, a beautiful, unique concert hall to be finished by 1963 for a tidy sum of $7 million Australian dollars. It was a bold, optimistic vision. What actually happened? The project was plagued by engineering nightmares, political infighting, and design changes. It was finally completed a decade late, in 1973. And the quit? A breezy $102 million. That's not a rounding error. That's a 1,400% cost overrun, fueled entirely by a catastrophic case of the planning fallacy. The original planners didn't account for, well, reality. They focused on their idealized vision and ignored all the messy, complicated things that could, and did, go wrong. This isn't just about giant architectural marvels. This fallacy is the gremlin that lives in your brain and sabotages your everyday life. It's why you think you can assemble that IKEA bookshelf in 20 minutes, a task that will inevitably consume your entire Saturday and a significant portion of your sanity. It's why you tell your boss you'll have that report done by noon when you know deep down it's a 2-day job. Your optimistic brain constructs a perfect best-case scenario and refuses to learn from past experiences. The cure, according to Kahneman, is something called reference class forecasting. In simple terms, ignore your own stupid, optimistic gut. Instead, look at how long similar projects have actually taken other people to complete. It's a dose of external realism to vaccinate you against your own internal delusion. Have you ever started a new diet with the absolute unwavering conviction that this time, this is the time, you will achieve monk-like discipline? You will eat nothing but kale and positive thoughts. Then, around 3 p.m. on day 2, a coworker offers you a single glorious cookie. You eat it. And what happens next? Do you say, oops, a minor slip-up, back to the kale? Or do you think, well, the diet is ruined, what the hell? And proceed to eat the entire box of cookies, a bag of chips, and that emergency pizza you keep in the freezer? If you chose the pizza, you're a victim of what researchers brilliantly named the what the hell effect. This phenomenon was first identified in studies on dieting by Janet Polivy and C. Peter Herman. They observed that it was the most rigid, optimistic dieters, the ones who set absolute zero-tolerance rules for themselves, who were most likely to catastrophically binge after a minor infraction. In their classic experiment, they'd bring dieters into the lab and, under the guise of a taste test, make them drink a high-calorie milkshake. Their diet for the day was officially broken. Then they'd be left alone to rate a plate of cookies. The people who were not on a diet ate a cookie or two, but the strict dieters, the optimists who believed in their own perfection, they went to town. They ate significantly more cookies, trapped in a spiral of self-sabotage triggered by a single failure. The psychology here is a beautiful trap. Overly optimistic goals like, I will never eat sugar again, create a black and white framework. You are either succeeding perfectly or failing completely. There is no middle ground. The moment you inevitably slip from perfect, your optimistic brain doesn't just recalibrate, it short circuits. The cognitive load of maintaining that perfect self-control is exhausting. The failure provides a release. What the hell, your brain says, the pressure's off, let's go nuts. It's a rebellion against your own impossible standards. This is why a more pessimistic or realistic approach is far more successful. A goal like, I'll try to eat better, and if I have a cookie, it's not a big deal, prevents the what the hell spiral. It's an admission that you're not a perfect robot, which ironically makes you far more likely to succeed. There is a fundamental law of the universe that you have undoubtedly observed. The loudest, most confident person in the room is very often the most breathtakingly incompetent. This isn't your imagination. It's a cognitive bias known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it is a terrifying testament to the dangers of unearned optimism. It is, simply put, the phenomenon where people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. They are too incompetent to even recognize their own incompetence. The effect was named after psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, who were inspired by the case of a man named MacArthur Wheeler. In '95, Wheeler robbed 2 banks in Pittsburgh in broad daylight with no mask on. When police showed him the crystal-clear surveillance tapes, he was flabbergasted. "But I wore the juice," he mumbled. His master plan, which he was supremely optimistic about, was to cover his face in lemon juice. He believed that since lemon juice can be used as invisible ink, it would render his face invisible to security cameras. His confidence in his criminal genius was absolute. His grasp on reality, however, was non-existent. This is the central paradox Dunning and Kruger uncovered. The very skills required to be good at something are the same skills required to accurately evaluate your performance in that area. If you're a terrible writer, you also lack the skills to recognize good writing. So you look at your own terrible work and think it's brilliant. Your brain, in an act of profound and misguided optimism, protects your ego by giving you a stellar review. It's a cognitive blind spot. The incompetent don't know they're incompetent. On the flip side, the study also found that highly competent individuals often underestimate their relative ability, suffering from a form of imposter syndrome. They incorrectly assume that tasks easy for them must be easy for others too. The takeaway is profoundly unsettling. It means that confidence is an incredibly unreliable indicator of skill. So the next time you encounter someone overflowing with certainty, have a healthy dose of pessimistic skepticism. Their confidence might not be a sign of expertise, but rather proof that they don't even know what they don't know. In the 1840s, a Hungarian doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis worked in a Vienna maternity clinic that had a terrifying problem. Women in one ward, attended by doctors and medical students, were dying of a gruesome illness called childbed fever at a rate 5 times higher than women in the second ward, which was run by midwives. Semmelweis was haunted by this. He investigated every possible difference, from birthing positions to religious rites. Nothing explained it. Then his friend, a pathologist, died after being accidentally cut by a student's scalpel during an autopsy. His friend's symptoms were identical to those of the women with childbed fever. Suddenly it clicked. The doctors and students were coming straight from performing autopsies to delivering babies, carrying what Semmelweis called cadaverous particles on their unwashed hands. He had his answer. He instituted a mandatory hand-washing policy using a chlorine solution. The results were immediate and staggering. The death rate in his ward plummeted by 90%, eventually matching the low rate of the midwife's clinic. The evidence was undeniable, a clear scientific triumph. Case closed, right? Wrong. The medical community didn't hail him as a hero. They ridiculed him, rejected his findings, and ran him out of Vienna. Why? Because of their optimism. They were optimistic about their own cleanliness, their own status, and their own identity as healers. Semmelweis' theory, despite the mountain of evidence, had a monstrous implication, that they, the esteemed men of science, were the ones killing their patients. Their optimistic self-concept made them immune to the evidence. This is a profound psychological phenomenon known as motivated reasoning. Our brains aren't dispassionate calculators of fact. They are biased lawyers defending a predetermined conclusion. In this case, the conclusion that I am a good person who helps people. Any fact that challenges this core belief isn't just questioned. It's aggressively attacked and dismissed. The doctor's optimism about their own virtue was so powerful it blinded them to the truth staring them in the face, a truth that could have saved countless lives. Semmelweis' story is a horrifying reminder that sometimes optimism isn't a virtue. It's a cognitive shield that protects our ego at the expense of reality, and in the most extreme cases, at the expense of others. Think back to that big family vacation you took as a kid. What do you remember? Probably a few sunny, happy snapshots, laughing on the beach, the thrill of a roller coaster, a funny inside joke. Now try to really remember it. That sunny day was also 100 degrees with no shade. The roller coaster came after a 2-hour wait next to a screaming child. And that inside joke happened in between 6 straight hours of your siblings fighting in the backseat while your parents debated the fastest route to a divorce. This isn't just you having a selective memory. It's a universal cognitive bias called rosy retrospection. It's your brain's tendency to be a ridiculously optimistic photo editor for your own past, making you remember events as being far more positive than they actually were. Your memory isn't a high-fidelity video recording. It's more like a storyteller trying to create a coherent and pleasant narrative about your life. To do this, it systematically filters out the boring, annoying, or moderately negative parts of an experience. The mundane details, the traffic jams, the bland airport food, the subtle feeling of disappointment, all fade away. What's left behind is an idealized highlight reel. Researchers have demonstrated this by asking people to rate their enjoyment of an event during the event and then again weeks later. The retrospective ratings are almost always significantly higher. The real-time data logs all the little frustrations, but the memory, with the benefit of hindsight, just keeps the good stuff. This is why we get nostalgic for the good old days, which at the time were just these annoying days. While it might seem harmless, this rosy optimism about the past creates 2 big problems. First, it can make you deeply dissatisfied with your perfectly fine present, because today can never compete with your brain's fictionalized greatest hits version of yesterday. Second, it makes you more likely to repeat mistakes. Your brain, in its infinite wisdom, has conveniently deleted the memory of how miserable you were the last time you decided to go on a 10-day camping trip in the rain, or how that relationship with your ex actually ended. Your optimistic memory isn't just giving you fond recollections, it's actively trying to trick you into making the same bad decisions all over again. So there you have it. From making you a terrible project manager to turning you into a delusional risk taker, your inner optimist is clearly not always your friend. It seems a healthy dose of reality and even a little pessimism is crucial for survival. If you want to find out what other shenanigans your brain is up to, make sure you're subscribed for the next video.